Hey everyone, I wanted to talk about mindful weight training. Now in my office I don't have any weights available, but I'll hopefully be able to tell you what I'm trying to get across with just showing you the movements. Whether you use free weights, machines, body weight, or device, the usual movements are broken down into two. You'll have a concentric activity and you'll have an eccentric activity. The concentric activity is taking the major muscle group that you're trying to work out and applying load while shortening muscle fiber. The eccentric activity is taking the major muscle group and lengthening muscle fiber, but also applying the same kind of resistance. In my weight training circles, you might think of the eccentric activity as a negative repetition. Negative repetitions are sometimes done as an overload activity. For example, when you're doing bench press, the objective of bench press is to take a weight, push and develop pectoralis strength, and then come back down to start. Well, the concentric activity would be pushing away. That's when you're contracting the pectoralis muscle, the chest muscles. The eccentric activity would be coming back down. Sometimes when you're fatigued and cannot get the extra repetition out, but you want more muscle stimulation, you and your partner lift the barbell to the peak range and you let it drop down to starting position with controlled force, stimulating muscle growth but using it in an eccentric fashion. I will usually blast through an exercise routine with speed. No waiting in between the sets. That's called high intensity interval training, made popular by Tabata in Japan. The objective is just like a wrestling team or a crew team, if you've ever seen them exercise. They go from movement to movement to movement with very little downtime. It certainly is a cardiovascular challenge, but you over-fatigue the muscle. You probably have very high lactic acid levels. The body, as many marathoners know, can get a tolerance to lactic acid and you'll fare better in the long run. So what we can sometimes do is when you're going through the movement, as you hit the peak movement, like in this lateral raise with concentric activity, instead of just dropping down during the eccentric phase, go to your peak and you slowly release into the eccentric, just like doing that negative I was talking about with bench press. You take a deep breath in and you slowly let out. So if you've ever watched my shoulder roll videos, I talk about moving the shoulders and adapting it to the breath, 4-7-8 breathing. Same thing with my concept of mindful weight training. Weight training, we can get a sympathetic response going. When anyone's going through a weight training routine, especially high intensity interval training, your sympathetic response is probably turned on. And that's okay for the short time that you're in the exercise routine, because the benefits of exercise will negate the sympathetic response. Remember, we're only allowed to be in fight or flight activity for a couple of times a year. If you have to generate that to get an exercise routine out, then you will get benefit overall. The problem I have is a lot of my patients will only be able to exercise at night. So if you do a regular weight training routine, fine, but if you finish it off by going to dinner and going to sleep, that might not be the best thing, especially if you're into Tabata exercises. That means within an hour to 2 hours of you exercising, you're going to try to tell the brain to get rid of all that sympathetic hormone. During the sympathetic fight or flight, you have epinephrine, norepinephrine, and adrenaline that's being secreted. You can't just shut that down. So usually my patients that have to exercise at night for whatever reason, they might say their sleep is good, but I usually challenge them with getting cortisol levels in the morning. And most of the time the cortisol levels are not great. Whether or not they have an issue of getting to sleep is not the question. The problem is when you get to sleep after having all that hormone released during your evening exercise, the brain is not allowed to rest. So technically, even though your eyes are shut, you're not getting the deep REM cycles per night that you need, 6 to 8. Remember, with low cortisol levels, you can survive with coffee, but eventually that testosterone decreases, so you wind up with erectile dysfunction, or you have problems with muscle mass in the long run, or you eventually will hit the wall. So just to summarize, the objective is during your concentric phase of movement, when you hit peak, you get there with speed and inhale. You slowly go down in a controlled manner with slow exhale. All measured out so your exhale is fully out by the time you hit start position again. Inhale, exhale slowly, out, Inhale, exhale slowly, out. Inhale, exhale slowly, out. So that's the benefit of mindful practice. Don't forget to give this a thumbs up if it helped you. Otherwise, subscribe to me for weekly words of wisdom.